what's happening in Hong Kong? I couldn't even quite find the latest info. Are tourists allowed in there at the moment?
Well, that's a difficult situation right now. No, they're not. Only Hong Kong residents are allowed to come in. And then you have to serve 3 weeks quarantine, one of the heaviest quarantines in the world. But on the other hand, for the local community, they're very proud of keeping the city very safe. One of the most densely populated but most exciting cities in the world of 7 million people have only had 213 deaths since this started. So wow. It has been managed very. When we are ready to have everybody come back, we're very confident that we can look after everyone. This is Jennifer Cronin, an Aussie in Hong Kong, chatting to Renae on her exciting new podcast, Where to From Here, about the future of travel.
And you're doing some really groundbreaking things during this time, such as bringing some of the high-profile brands together to form an alliance. I think I read Mandarin Oriental, Peninsula, Wharf Hotels, and some others. How difficult was that to actually get everyone to talk to each other?
This all came about in 2019 when we were going through the social unrest that was happening in the city. And at that time, we knew that business was still going on, but other groups like the media, CNN, BBC, were reporting that it was a war zone on the streets and it was very dangerous. So we wanted to counteract that and change the narrative and to be able to tell the rest of the world that people were coming and going. I had family and friends still visit during that time and had a fantastic time in Hong Kong. So together we came up with a fabulous video to help spread the joy, the love of Hong Kong around the world. And since then, we have done other activities to really remind not just the world, but also our local community that travelers, visitors, they're our lifeblood and we need them to come back. So we wanted to make sure that they felt safe to be able to do so.
Oh, no, absolutely. And crisis has been a part of your life, because I was reading that, at 18, you had lost 2 of your brothers and your mum and dad. How did you cope with that situation at the time?
I think when we go through those difficult times, it makes us much stronger and become a lot more aware of how to plan, how to cope, how to stay above this. And for me, it was very much, I came from a very loving and a very happy big family. And it was really important to be able for me to show my mum and dad, even though they were gone and I know watching over me, that they had given me the right tools to be able to cope and to go on and be a success in whatever I did. And I'm very grateful for that grounding that they gave me many years ago. And now it gives me that much more empathy, I believe, much more compassion when my own colleagues may be going through some really tough patches of family and friends, and being able to just be there for them. And they know you have that bond that once you've been through that, people, unless you've been through it, you don't really understand it. So it's very important to be able to reach out to people and remind them that we've all been through something tragic or something very sad, but life does move on and we have to make the most of it. And life is very short. That's what I really learned. And that's why I pack as much as I possibly can into every day.
Oh, absolutely. So inspiring. And when was the point in your life when you realized that crisis, if you like, was really going to be the focus of your life and your career, to the point where you went and got a PhD in crisis management?
Yeah, I'm an unusual beast, I think, in our industry to have taken time out to study full time at Bonn University. And I'd already completed my undergrad at Griffith University, a proud Queenslander. So I love to be able to share that the education that I have been given has allowed me to propel forward. And I was in Thailand during the yellow shirt and red shirt crises. I was there for 4 years. I had been in Singapore during SARS and the Bali bombings and various other crises along the way. And it was obvious that hotels and our industry sector, our travel industry sector, were not as prepared for crises, say like the military or fire emergency services or whatever. And I knew that there was a better way of being able to be prepared for it. So it came at the right point to be able to go back, study, research, put forward my findings, and then now 7 years or almost 8 years in Hong Kong, being able to apply that learning to what I do within our own organization. And I've been able, one of the research outcomes of my study was that every organization, whether it be hotels or any organization, needs to have a living manual. Many companies will have a crisis management manual or a crisis communications manual. They'll leave it on the shelf and they'll never touch it again or refer to it. This way, we adopted this a number of years ago, and it has prepared me and our organization to be ahead of the curve whenever it came to these crises. Last year, when it was evident that a pandemic was afoot, in January, we were coming into the Chinese New Year here in Hong Kong. We were already doing travel declaration forms, testing. Hong Kong has managed through this very, very well, as has mainland China. And as a result of that, we are always prepared. So this living manual, throughout all of last year and this year, as we learnt more and we discovered best practices from our hotels, we've actually added case studies to that living manual and keep referring back to it. So,
and look, you manage 17 five-star hotels. One of which is in Wuhan. So amongst everything that you're talking about in terms of the crisis, how did you deal with that?
Yeah, we have a great general manager in that hotel, a very dedicated general manager. And he was, at the time when it was announced, so this is ground zero last year, and he's Malaysian. Mr. Lee, he was given a seat to fly back home to Malaysia to get out of Wuhan. But he saw the fear in the eyes and the sadness, the concern, the uncertainty of all of his staff at that time. And he decided, I can't do it. He and his wife stayed all the way through. Our hotel then became immediately the host hotel of 300 emergency workers from Beijing, from the leading virologists and scientists, and they stayed in our hotel for almost 3 months.
This is in Wuhan.
Wuhan, not one case of COVID in our hotels at all. Wow. And poor Mr. Lee still hasn't been able to go home to Malaysia nearly 2 years on.
That's leadership. That's leadership, isn't it?
Yeah, it's about knowing that your people need you, and you need to give them that leadership and that confidence that you're in it together, you're going to get through it one way or the other. And here from Hong Kong, I've watched in Australia during the bushfires, I've watched various crises. I'm very proud of how Aussies know how to deal with a crisis, and they're able to be very open, honest, transparent, and communicate what needs to be communicated.
Well, tell us then, what are your top 5 ways to deal with a crisis, if you like? Putting you on the spot.
My top 5, well, it's always about getting your facts. And if you don't know your facts, admit to it. Communicating as much as you possibly, you cannot communicate enough during any crisis. Being visible, we haven't been able to go to our hotels, but we're doing regular, we've all become very adept on doing these types of Zoom calls or meetings and so on. So for me, it's communicate. That Those are the key issues, and to get as much information and to stay ahead of that curve with that information as you can.
Yeah, which, you know, is not easy at all times.
No, definitely, and not when it, you know, the goalpost keeps moving either. So it's been quite a roller coaster, and we're not Robinson Crusoe. It's happening everywhere.
What are you doing in your downtime to de-stress? I mean, you can't travel, obviously.
Yeah, well, Hong Kong, a lot of people don't realize, and this was the beauty of our heritage group that we pulled together in late 2019. We did a spectacular short video of Hong Kong to share with the world on all of our various platforms. And many people don't realize Hong Kong has 265 islands. It has some of the best hiking in the world. And now we're coming into autumn. So with the backdrop that you see here, that's only part of it. But once you get out into the other islands, it really is a great part of the world to be in. And the skies are blue. One thing that COVID has brought us all is this spectacular blue skies, which we hadn't been having for many years. So as I always say, out of every crisis, there's an opportunity. And I think for us, we've been able to decompress, get out into, you know, the hiking trails. The waterfalls in Hong Kong are spectacular. There's so much outside of this great hustle and bustle of the city that it's given us all a chance to really get to know Hong Kong that much better.
Would you say this is your toughest crisis?
Oh, most definitely, because of how it's been so prolonged, and how last year we really felt that this year would be our ramp up year. We would be able to open borders, come back and really start to, you know, host all of the conventions and everything that Hong Kong is well known for. But unfortunately, this is not looking like we will open the borders until next year. And of course, the latest little road bump that we've had along the way will make it a little bit more difficult. But we know that people want to travel again. They are dying to get out there. We've seen it in Europe and the US. So we're watching what's happening in the rest of the world. And we know that Asia is being overly cautious, maybe, or as everybody uses the term, with an abundance of caution. We are keeping all of the restrictions in place. So until we open, but when we do, we will be certainly ready to bring everybody back.
Fantastic. And tell us, I know you said earlier that you are a little bit unusual perhaps in your career, but you're also unusual, if I might say, because you went from marketing to very, very senior management, which is also unusual. How do you explain that, and how did you do it?
I'd actually, just prior to this call, finished doing a virtual webinar for Griffith University and our Auscham Hong Kong interns. And that question did come up as well. And what I would advise, and as I did in that call, is that whenever you've achieved a certain goal in your educational journey, whether it be undergraduate or any certification at all, be prepared to learn from the bottom and move up. So my first, even though I had a degree in Japanese and economics, my first job was a room service waitress in a hotel.
That's amazing.
But the thing is, it then gave me a great grounding in how hotels work, because within 2 years, I'd worked in about 6 different areas of the hotel. And then to have had, I've also had 2 roles as a general manager of a hotel, one being the beautiful Coralban Golf Resort just in southeast Queensland. And then I opened a hotel on the Gold Coast and went back into marketing, because really marketing is what will propel an organization if it's done well. And it's about understanding, you know, your guests' customer needs and attuning the product to what they need, or what are the new trends and the way forward. So I was able to use that to my advantage, and it allowed me then to take on bigger and bigger corporate regional roles, which has then led me to this position as well.
And what about as a woman? I mean, there are not many women sitting in the world right now in the kind of position. I mean, you're president of all of these hotels. You've got some 4,000 staff underneath you, or you did pre-pandemic. I mean, what would you say to a woman wanting to follow in your footsteps?
I think I've had some great role models of men, unfortunately, not so much of women. So now I spend a lot of time, actually, this afternoon, I'm doing a one-on-one mentoring with a great young lady who has huge potential. It's really sharing those experiences now. Because I didn't have them, and or I didn't have those role model examples to be able to follow through with. But I'm just somebody, and it comes back to my mum and dad, I think, is be the best at whatever you do, love what you do, and be passionate about it. And therefore, that's helped me, overcome some of those barriers. And there've been a lot of barriers over the time. And I was general manager of a hotel at 35, which even then was most unusual back in 1995. So I guess I've always wanted to crash into that glass ceiling and just keep going up and see how far I can go. And that's really what it's all about. And on top of that, I think the reason why I did pursue all of the tertiary qualifications was to prove that hoteliers are more than, serving cups of coffee. We really
more than a room service waitress.
Yeah. We are managing multi-million-dollar assets. We are managing, large groups of people who rely upon us for their livelihoods to survive in some of our countries that we operate, such as the Philippines. So it really is very much something that is very near and dear to my heart, to be able to pay it forward, whether it be for our people, for the new generation coming through. Hoteliers, it's a tough industry right now, but it will bounce back, and there are amazing opportunities.
Totally agree. And there's never been more opportunities than now from everyone we're speaking to, because the industry is screaming for good people.
Correct. It's so true. And while they left the industry for a short time, I'm sure they are going to have the travel bug. They are going to want to see the world. And this was a great way for me and my husband to see the world through my work.
I wanted to say to you, I did read that you have a husband. He must be incredibly supportive. I read that he was washing dishes at the Hyatt where you were working during the SARS crisis in Singapore to help you out.
Yeah. Barry has been my rock, and we've been married for 40 years now, and he gave up his job for me to follow my dream. And it's really, I feel very blessed to have him. And actually, we sold our house in 1989 to pay for my MBA at Bond University to be in the first class. So he's always understood that we're doing this together and it's a team effort.
Wow, well, what a wonderful relationship. And tell me, why did you choose Bond? It was such a young university. There were so many other options for you.
Yeah, and there were a lot of cheaper options too at the time. And what I loved about it was talked so much about entrepreneurship, about building business leaders one by one. Again, I'm a risk taker, so it was a bit of an unknown at the time, and this meant that we were investing in more education for me. But at the end of the day, will it stand the test of time? Well, it's proven itself incredibly resilient and has gone on. We've got fantastic alumni around the world. And I actually head up the global alumni organization.
I read that.
On the advisory board for Bond. And I also work very closely with Griffith University as well. I love being able to give back into the universities or my high school, Beenleigh State High School. I've actually, prior to COVID, had organized study tours to our hotels in mainland China. So I had 3 years of those study tours. We've got a brilliant high school principal in Beenleigh, and there's no greater diplomacy than student diplomacy in my book. And it opened the eyes of these young kids from Beenleigh High to a completely different world. And I think this is what we can do in our roles in travel, but also in any organization is to encourage greater learning from each other. And
agreed. I do a lot of it myself. I have a lot of interns. I speak at a lot of universities and sit on boards and things. It's so important, as you said, to give back and to give the knowledge back.
Yes, definitely.
But can you talk us through, I have not stayed at either the Niccolo or Marco Polo hotels that you look after. Can you just talk us through the different brands and the hotels and what they mean?
Marco Polo Hotels, just as the namesake is, were brought about over 30 years ago. The one here in Hong Kong that I'm based in, the Marco Polo Hong Kong, has been open for 53 years. Very well known by many, many Australians. We're right on the harbour, and actually it's where many of the cruise ships have left from. So many people would come in, stay here, and then get on the cruise ship. Then part of my remit when I joined the company was to open a new luxury brand, and we opened our first one in Chengdu, and it's called Niccolo Hotels. Niccolo was actually the father of Marco Polo. Right. And Niccolo was the first one who went to China, not Marco Polo. So that hotel group, we now have 5, 4 in the cities of Chengdu, which is the panda city of China, Chongqing, which is one of the largest cities in the world with over 30 million people, just in one city. Changsha, Suzhou, we've just opened in April this year. We call it our beacon of the future. And then we have our flagship here in Hong Kong called the Murray. It's in a refurbished building, and it is very, as the brand is very contemporary chic. And if you visited that on our websites, which is about all you can do right now, you would see just how stunning the property is.
But look, you're so well positioned to comment and to explain to us, how do Westerners achieve successful relationships in business with the Asian culture? Because there are a lot of challenges.
I think what it is really being prepared to understand the culture, to immerse yourself, whether it be the food, some languages. You know, it's like everywhere, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. And you really have to be seen to be totally transparent and to really show a commitment to wanting to make a better community together. And I think that that's paid off in the long run, definitely for me. And hence, not only is it the Australian universities I'm involved with, here in Hong Kong, I'm the chair of the advisory board for Hong Kong PolyU, which is one of the top hotel and tourism management universities in the world now. And so I'm also involved locally, and that's part of really making sure that you're getting totally involved in being seen and really making a positive contribution to society.
Yeah, 100%. But look, I could talk to you literally all day. I think you are such an inspiration, and just, you know, being in Hong Kong is one thing, but being from Australia and constantly coming back to your roots and respecting where you came from, you've just got such great values, Jennifer, amongst everything else. But can I ask you, where to from here?
Right. Straight after this, I'm having lunch with the head of the Hong Kong Tourism Board. And after that, just too far out for me right now.
And what's on the agenda? Are you trying to find out when the border's going to open or what the strategy is? Or
Definitely. They know that that's the first question. And actually, we're all working towards that. And while we keep everybody safe, we cannot survive without having everybody come back.
Yeah, no, 100%. And as you know, Australia is the same. Our borders only opened on November the 1st, and that's for Australian people to come and go. A lot of my friends have already gone and come back. So I'm sure it won't be too long.
I hope so. Thank you, Renae.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate the chat. Don't forget to subscribe here and follow us on Instagram and Facebook for regular travel updates. You can also hear our episodes on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.